After Denmark's defeat in the Second Schleswig War in 1864, Jan Jensen and his younger brother Peter left their homeland and crossed the Atlantic to America, hoping to start a new life. For the next 7 years, they worked tirelessly to build a new life in a foreign land. Despite being consumed by the daily struggles, John never stopped thinking about his wife, Marie, and their young son, Christian, who remained in Denmark. Years of separation had left a deep emptiness in John's heart. In 1871, at a border train station in the United States, John and Peter stood waiting with eager anticipation. At last, the long-awaited moment arrived. John saw Marie and Christian step off the train, both beaming with joyful smiles. Christian reunited with his father with deep love and affection. John proudly introduced his wife and son to Peter, and the three of them began their journey home together. Peter announced he would stay in town for a while to take care of some matters. Marie, John's wife, didn't speak English yet, but she would learn soon. That warm moment was quickly interrupted. Two men appeared strangers with a menacing and suspicious look. One of them was Paul Delarue, the older brother of Henry Delarue, a notorious gang leader. Paul had just been released from prison, and the cold look in his eyes was a bad omen. From that point on, everything began to spiral out of control. That night, as Paul and his companion dozed off, a peaceful moment settled inside the wagon. Joan taught Christian about the local wildlife and spoke of upcoming hunting trips. But the calm was soon broken. Paul suddenly struck up a conversation with Marie and offered her a drink of water. She declined, making the atmosphere slightly awkward. Since Marie didn't speak English, John gently advised her in Danish to accept the offer out of politeness. She agreed, hoping to avoid further discomfort. However, Paul continued with inappropriate and suggestive remarks, making the situation increasingly tense. His words touched on painful memories from Marie's past, and a growing sense of unease began to show. Paul began making advances toward Marie, which infuriated John. He deliberately touched her dress, prompting Joan to speak up and warn him. Immediately, Paul's companion drew a gun, threatening John and ordering him to stay silent. Fearing for his wife's safety, John whispered in Danish, telling Marie to bite Paul's ear to create a chance to fight back. She did as instructed. In the chaos that followed, John quickly grabbed the thug's gun and tried to take control of the situation. He told Christian to pick up the other gun, but Paul acted fast. He grabbed Christian and held a knife to the boy's throat, threatening to kill the entire family unless John got out of the wagon immediately. John tried to say something to Marie, but one of the attackers kicked him out of the wagon. Moments later, he discovered Christian's lifeless body lying by the roadside. Devastated and in shock, John held his son tightly and broke down in tears. Slowly, he lifted the boy's body and continued walking. Farther down the road, John saw the wagon had stopped. He laid his son's body down and approached the dead driver to retrieve his gun. With the skill of a former soldier, John fired a shot that startled the horses, then aimed at the attackers. He quickly took down one of them and chased after Paul, who was trying to escape. Paul begged for his life, insisting he hadn't hurt anyone. But things had already gone too far to turn back. The next morning, Peter arrived and noticed unfamiliar horses around the area. He went to investigate and was shocked to find John sitting in tears beside the bodies of Marie and Christian. Peter tried to comfort his brother, but all John could say was that he didn't know who had done it. The two brothers embraced, both overwhelmed with grief. The scene then shifts to a dusty town in the Wild West. A group of armed men on horseback ride in with an air of arrogance, as if they own the place. Leading them is Henry Delarue, a ruthless former Union colonel known for his bloody campaigns against Native Americans. He dismounts and goes to meet Mayor Nathan Keene, who also serves as the town's priest and undertaker. Henry appears furious, a clear sign that trouble is on the horizon. Henry Delarue demanded an explanation for the deaths of two men found nearby. Mayor Keene, visibly anxious, assured him that no one in the town was involved in the incident. However, neither he nor the townspeople were yet aware that one of the dead men was Paul Delarue's brother. That truth remained hidden, and the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. Delarue finally spoke, demanding that the town find the killer by noon. If not, he threatened to execute 2 innocent townspeople in revenge. He cited the Bible to justify his actions, claiming it was rightful punishment. To increase the pressure, he warned that if the mayor refused to choose, he would kill 4 people instead of 2. Not long after, 2 townspeople were chosen as victims: Mrs. Borowski, an elderly woman who owned the gun shop, and a one-legged man. Although people tried to comfort each other, fear hung heavily in the air. Delarue shot and killed the disabled man to prove he was serious about his threat. Mrs. Borowski's grandson burst into tears beside her. Though she bravely prayed for Delarue's wicked soul, he killed her without hesitation. He didn't stop there. Delarue went on to murder another innocent townsman right in front of the man's wife, showing no sign of remorse. Sheriff Malik urged the townspeople to remain calm and not intervene. But in the face of Delarue's brutality, everyone seemed powerless. He continued to impose higher protection fees and raise prices. Meanwhile, at Paul's funeral, his mute widow Meline stood silently by his grave. Delarue offered a few words of comfort, but they were cold and devoid of emotion. At the same time, John and Peter held a funeral for Marie and Creston. The weight of their grief, combined with a burning desire for revenge, drove the brothers to leave town and head west. Thanks to their exceptional shooting skills, they quickly drew attention. Some townspeople began to suspect they might have been involved in Paul's death. When they arrived in the town of Black Creek, someone reported them to the sheriff. There were those who believed men like John were needed to stand up to the growing wave of violence. But they also knew that going up against Delarue was nearly impossible to win. During this time, John tried to sell his land to Mayor Keene. However, Keene only offered half the original price, citing Delarue's new taxes and escalating threats. It was then that John realized the man he had killed was none other than Paul Delarue. With no other choice, John agreed to sell the land at a low price. Keene advised him to hide the money in his boot for safety, warning that too many desperate people out there were willing to rob for it. Meanwhile, Delarue and Meline, also known as the Princess, met with businessmen from the Standard Atlantic Oil Company. They handed Delarue a sum of money and warned that his violent behavior could cause serious problems if left unchecked. The businessmen revealed that the federal government had cut off Black Creek's water supply, leaving Sheriff Malik completely unsupported. The company's goal was to buy up all the land in the area, as it sat atop a vast oil reserve. They wanted Delarue to use force to secure control. Not long after, Peter was captured following a fierce struggle. Soon after, Sheriff Malik had a serious conversation with John. He admitted the situation was becoming desperate and urged John to turn himself in. Malik believed that if John sacrificed himself, his death might buy the town enough time for the federal government to send help. Though it pained him deeply, he saw this as possibly the last chance to change the course of events. The next morning, under a dry and silent sky, Sheriff Malik handed John over to Delarue's gang. Before being taken away, John was struck hard by Delarue's right-hand man, a humiliating blow. He was then tied to a rough wooden post outside Delarue's headquarters, left exposed under the harsh sunlight. Delarue appeared alongside Meline, the mute widow of his deceased brother. Though exhausted, John still tried to tell her the truth that it was Delarue who had killed his son and assaulted his wife. But Delarue didn't let him finish. He struck John again, clearly unwilling to listen. With a cold demeanor, he warned that sooner or later, Joan's true nature would be exposed. Delarue's plan was simple but cruel. He tied John up under the scorching sun, denying him food and water, intending to slowly wear him down until he died from heat and exhaustion. Time dragged on, the sun beat relentlessly, and vultures began circling overhead. As things grew increasingly hopeless, Mayor Keene appeared unexpectedly. At first, it seemed he had come to help, but instead, he took advantage of the situation to steal Joan's boots and the money hidden inside. With a crooked smile and an oddly friendly demeanor, Mayor Keene addressed Delarue by his first name, revealing the alliance between the two men. Meanwhile, at the jail, Sheriff Malik was attending a church service. Back at the jailhouse, Joan's older brother Peter began preparing to escape. Unlike John, Peter proved to be more cunning and resourceful in this situation. He deliberately provoked the deputy guarding him with sharp, taunting remarks, aiming to make the man lose his temper and let his guard down. The deputy responded with insults and mockery, unaware that he was walking into a trap. Seizing the moment, Peter struck him down and made a successful escape. Meanwhile, at Delarue's hideout, it was clear he felt no sorrow over the death of his brother Paul. On the contrary, he treated Mylene, Paul's mute widow, as his own possession. Despite the bruises on her face and the fear in her eyes, Delarue forced her onto the bed. The injuries on Mylene's body said it all. This wasn't love. It was brutal domination. Delarue painted a grand vision for Mylene, promising she would become the Queen of New Orleans, but it was a future she never wanted. That night, the rain poured down in torrents. Joan, still tied to the post, was exhausted and drenched. Fortunately, Peter finally arrived to rescue him. As they made their escape, they encountered two members of Delarue's gang. Peter acted quickly, shooting them both down. Thanks to his swift and decisive action, the escape went smoothly and unnoticed at first. Soon after, Delarue's men gave chase on horseback. John, too weak to hold on, fell from his horse. Thinking quickly, Peter pulled John behind a large rock to avoid being spotted. Knowing the pursuers wouldn't stop, Peter made the brave decision to act as a decoy. He split off from John, drawing the gang's attention and leading them far away. The next morning, John awoke, exhausted and parched. He dragged himself to a muddy puddle and drank desperately to survive. But the moment of relief turned to horror when he saw one of Delarue's men dragging Peter's lifeless body behind a horse. At the same time, back at Delarue's compound, the safe had been emptied and Myline was gone. She had taken the oil money and escaped to the train station. Standing beside the train with a heavy bag full of cash, Myline looked around anxiously, hoping to leave it all behind. Delarue suddenly appeared and slapped her hard. Still, she refused to back down. She even spat blood in his face. Delarue was about to kill her on the spot, but his right-hand man stopped him, arguing that she was still useful. Thanks to that, her life was temporarily spared. While wandering through the arid land near Black Creek, John happened upon Mrs. Whistler, a stern and well-armed landowner. As he approached her well, she fired a warning shot. Still, John, too thirsty and desperate to turn back, kept moving forward. But the well was filled with crude oil. There was no water. Once she realized who he was, Mrs. Whistler lowered her gun, invited him into her home, and gave him food and clean water. She had lost her husband to the violence caused by Delarue. That night, Joan took a gun and went to Mayor Keene's house. He forced him to return the boots and the money he had stolen. During the interrogation, John discovered that Keene had once purchased land from Mrs. Whistler. Cornered, Keene tried to lie, but John forced him into an open coffin, sending him into a panic. Eventually, Keene confessed that he had handed over the land deeds to Delarue, helping him gain control of the town. John then went to Mrs. Whistler's old store, now run by her grandson, Voich. There, he gathered supplies, ammunition, and flammable liquids. He instructed Voich to inform Sheriff Malik about the shady alliance between Delarue and Keene. Delarue believed the oil in the region would soon become extremely valuable. The next morning, John began to carry out his plan. John placed Mayor Keene's body inside a coffin to lure Delarue. When Delarue opened the lid and saw the corpse, he panicked and ordered the coffin to be burned. At the same time, Voich lit a campfire nearby as a distraction. From his hiding spot, John opened fire.
He's on fire!
Voich bravely climbed onto the rooftop with flammable materials, but the noise from above alerted one of the thugs. The man discovered Mylene tied up upstairs. Voich tried to shoot but missed and was shot dead by another thug below. As the killer smoked a cigarette, he had no idea the floor was soaked with fuel. Hearing the noise, John rushed toward the flames. He saw the man dragging Malign outside and quickly shot him in the leg, bringing him down. As John stepped into the open, he made a critical mistake he forgot about Delarue. The gang leader shot him, bringing him to the ground. Standing over him, Delarue mocked John, impressed that he had lasted longer than expected. But just as he was about to finish him off, Malign appeared. After a single gunshot rang out, John and Malign found themselves pointing guns at each other, frozen in a tense standoff. But then, they both slowly lowered their weapons. They had each suffered too much, and now they shared a common enemy. At that moment, Sheriff Malik arrived with reinforcements. He thanked John for saving the town, but appeared concerned upon seeing Malign. John assured him that he would protect her. With no other choice, Malik backed off. As peace returned to the town, John and Malign quietly left together, beginning a new chapter bound by pain, justice, and the will to survive.